Hi, you've reached Tim and Gabrielle from Excel Talk. We're not able to come to the phone right now, but if you leave a message, we'll be sure to respond by playing your message on our live Excel Talk broadcast. Welcome everyone to Excel Talk. My name is Tim Rodman and I run the augforums.com website, which is an independent online community dedicated to Acumatica Cloud ERP. A couple things I wanted to point out there. If you go up to the free bar on the top, there's a podcast. I'm always looking for guests to come on the podcast and talk about Acumatica. There's also a Rolodex, so you can check out other people who are using Acumatica and send them a message. And then I've also got up on the top a course, which is an online video training course on generic inquiries and pivot tables in Acumatica.
I'm Gabriel. I am the founder of Elixo, focused on Excel reporting for Acumatica, actually anything Excel, not just reporting. I am also a regular participant in the Acumatica community forums at community.acumatica.com. Very happy to be with you today, Tim. Have you had a good summer?
Yes, I did. Yeah, we're back. I was looking it up. Last broadcast was May 19th, so over 3 months ago.
3 months. Wow.
Good to be back. How about you? Any trips?
We've been pretty quiet this summer. Stayed local. My last trip was a few weeks ago to Washington, D.C. on business, but otherwise just enjoyed the summer, did some camping on the countryside, and really ready to rock things again with you in Excel Talk.
And I guess now is a good time to mention our next broadcast will be September 12th. And we're both going to be down in Atlanta at AUG Summit 2022. So we're going to do our next broadcast live from that event in Atlanta on September 12th. So we'll have to figure out the cameras all over again. But we'll be able to do that live. Maybe we can grab some people who are there. I don't know. We'll figure that out when we get down there. Should be fun.
Yeah.
Well, today we got working with file attachments in Acumatica. And I thought I'd start off with a message that we got. We haven't had a message in a while, so it's nice to have one. Reminder for anyone with Excel questions, especially Velixo questions, which is what this is kind of turned into. 833 Excel Talk. It's an old school voicemail. Leave us a message so we can play it on the show. So I think I'll go ahead and play the message and we'll go from there.
Hi, Tim, Gabrielle. This is Rick over at Concero Global. Hey, I have a client that wants to export all of their file attachments from their Acumatica SaaS environment and import those attachments into a local Acumatica environment without having to replace, the local environment with a full database backup. They've used Acumatica as a document repository, right, in several ways. So they'll have, W-9s at the vendor master record. They'll have PDFs of vendor bills attached to AP bills in Acumatica, et cetera. So I have two questions. First, can you think of a way to export those file attachments from the Acumatica SaaS environment? And then secondly, can you think of a way to import those file attachments into the local environment? Thanks for checking this out for me. I love Excel Talk. Appreciate all you guys do for the ecosystem. Thanks, guys.
So, Gabrielle, we were exchanging emails on this, and we're not exactly sure the reason for the use case, but I jumped on it because I've been wanting to talk file attachments anyway. So I'm kind of using this as an excuse. And for Rick, I had a couple of ideas. Neither one of them are that great, but record a couple demo videos. I'm going to start off with one that involves a database backup. So we'll get through those, and then we can get to your Excel ideas on how to do stuff. My first idea for working or exporting file attachments out of an Acumatica environment is to use a database backup. Now, if you're an Acumatica SaaS customer, you don't have direct access to the database, but you can open a support case with Acumatica, and for a fee, I don't remember how much it is, but they can provide you a database backup. So not the most ideal in terms of getting it because there's a fee involved to your SaaS customer, but this is one way to do it. So if you get that database backup, you would then restore into, I'm using Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio. You can see my database, if I hover over here, is Acumatica 2022 R1. It's my database name. And in the database, there's a table called company. Now, in my case, I only have one company. This is like a system company, but you likely have multiple records in here, and you only want to get the main production company that you're using, because even though it's called company in the database, it's actually the tenant on the front end. So you might have multiples in here. Even if you have snapshots, you'll see records for the snapshots. Just get the record that is your production environment. Then all of the file attachments by default are stored in the database. So if you have that database backup, you actually have the file attachments. They're just hidden, or buried, I should say, in a table. And the table is this upload file revision table. Now you want to take that company ID and filter it so that you're only getting the file attachments for your production tenant. You don't want to get a bunch of extra stuff that you're not going to need. So if we look at this table, we can see it's got file identifiers, and the main reason I'm querying it is to point out this column right here. This data column, even though it looks just like a regular column here, this is actually all the data that's necessary to store a file attachment. File attachment by file attachment. So it's not your typical database column that's a date or a text or a number. Actually, if we go over here to the tables and we go down to the upload file revision table and we take a look at the columns, and then we look at that data column right here, you can see the data type is var binary. So it's a special data type that's designed to store file attachments. So even though I only have 1,100 records in this table, this is actually taking up a good amount of space. You can see I do have a size column here, and this is the bulk of what's taking up the space. I can also see that in the front end on Acumatica. If I go to this screen called Space Used, first you have to click Calculate Use Space for it to calculate it, but then you can go to the Tables tab, and if you sort by size in DB, in descending order, usually this is one of the largest tables in the database. So you can see that even though it's got a low record count, it's got a high file or table size because, again, those file attachments are stored in this table. So how do we extract them? If you've got the database backup, you can use this SQL script. Now, I was pleasantly surprised, or it was just a pleasant experience. This took less than 5 minutes. I just did a Google search, can't remember what I searched for, but thank you to Ashutosh Mund. He wrote up a blog post on how to do this. So if we browse out to the blog post, let me scroll up to the top here. There's a perfect, exactly what I was looking to do. I just copied and pasted this. The only thing I changed was the query, which I'll show you in a minute here. But you can use this blog post. And there's one little trick that he has down here that I had to do as well. I got an error if I didn't do this. You have to go in and set this OLE automation to true for this to work. So as long as you do that, come back here. The only thing I changed was this right here, this query. So I'm only looking for Excel files just so I don't, for this demo purposes, so I didn't pull a ton of data. But this is my query to get essentially the file name. Actually, let's take a look at it. The file name, and there's that data column that has the actual data, which is the file attachment itself. So as long as you've got that, you can see I set mine to export it to C exported files. So right now you can see this C exported files is empty, but all I need to do is execute this. You can see it found 68 Excel files in there. If I come back here, you can see this folder is now populated with my file attachments. And just to prove that these are real working files, let's go ahead and double click on this one and we'll open it in Excel. And you can see when it comes up here that yes, indeed, this is a real file that we pulled out of a database backup. So that's one idea for extracting images. The key there, though, is that it requires a database backup. And I don't know if you remember, Gabrielle, I think it's like maybe a few $100s to get one of those from Acumatica. Do you recall?
Yes, there's a fee, but on the other end, somebody could take a database snapshot using the built-in snapshot tool and just restore that locally to an Acumatica test environment.
If it's not too big, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. If it's bigger than 1 gigabyte, you're likely going to run into issues creating the snapshot and then restoring it.
Yeah, I'm working with a client right now that's got a ton of file attachments. Their database has gotten gigantic, so they can't do snapshots anymore. And one thing we're looking at is using the Amazon S3 storage option. I don't know if you heard anything recently on that. I know they disabled it in SaaS environments, but I think you can still turn it on. But I don't know if is it still a reliable thing.
Really? Any idea why it may have been disabled?
My guess is that it has to do with when you're going to copy your production tenant to a test tenant, all those file links are still there. So it's not truly a test tenant. And
correct, yes.
I feel like I heard something from Ali about that. That might be why they disabled it, but I still think it's a great feature because it pushes all that large stuff out of your database. But.
Yes, exactly. Acumatica always add that extensible API for file storage. Actually, Tim, you might remember, but one of the first Acumatica extensions that I built was a storage provider for Box.com. We did have, actually, the customer is still using Acumatica and still using the Box plugin. I say we did because I'm no longer involved in this project. But this is the Acumatica Box integration that we were selling and supporting back in the days. So it goes beyond what the S3 integration would do. S3 just uses Amazon as a storage backend, but in the case of the Box integration, we did have a nice folder structure. So you would have, let's say, a folder for customers, for vendors, for invoices, and then the second level would be the order number, and then inside that you would have all the files. It also offered two-way sync, so if you add a file manually to Box from your computer or from the web portal, the file would be synchronized back to Acumatica as well.
Do you know where it would go? Like it would get synced back, but then would it get attached to anything or just sit there?
It just sits in Box. Acumatica just keeps a link. There's a blob handler column in one of the tables you might have seen. So that's how it's handled internally. Same technique with S3. There were some drawbacks, so that's why I'm thinking maybe the reason Acumatica disabled that is just because of maintenance. Like mainly in our case, the biggest issue was the fact that your customization projects are stored in S3 or Box, and to publish the customization, you do need to be able to have access to the storage. So it's a chicken and egg problem whenever comes time to publish a customization. So it did create other issues. Yeah,
I hadn't thought about that. How do you get around that?
You manually deploy the files in the environment.
Oh,
which is a non-starter in the SaaS environment. If you have full access to it, that works.
Okay.
I would think, and I had made this suggestion to Acumatica years ago, like maybe 10 years ago, that some files should be stored in the database by default. So customizations is a good example of such files. This way, it would prevent these issues. You would only turn on external file storage for customers, vendors, invoices, and then all the system entities like customization projects would still be kept in the database.
Okay. Interesting.
I'll put the link in the chat and here if anyone is interested in taking a look. So it's been open sourced by Acumatica. Acumatica did re-implement the box integration at some point. So it contains instructions. So it's like more or less unsupported. You can find a fork that I did on my own time, and that also includes changes to support later versions of Acumatica. Actually, here's the fork here. Yeah, and I wish Rick was on this show today. I would like to ask him why he's trying to export all the files. Maybe he has something like that in mind. They might be using SharePoint and they want to have a synchronized copy of their Acumatica files locally, something like that. Any thoughts on your side as to why he wants to export all these files?
They didn't want to wipe out their environment for some reason. Yeah, I'm not sure why.
Okay.
Yeah, good question.
Yeah.
Thanks for those links. I like your first one because it's on the Acumatica GitHub page. I'm not sure if this is still the case, but I know that they were offering a support plan for stuff that was on their GitHub page. Because that's a problem, that it's open source, it's completely unsupported. I don't know if they're still doing that, but that's something to open a support case with Acumatica and ask about if you're interested in using that. There might even be a supported a way that you can pay an annual fee to make sure that it gets upgraded for new versions.
Yeah, the second link that I shared is actually just a fork. So it's the same repository, but with minimal changes. I could technically push this back to Acumatica and offer them to take over the latest changes. It's mainly a few bug fixes that I did because we were using that at Velixo2 at some point. So I made the bug fixes, and also I added compatibility for newer versions of Acumatica. But again, it's always the issue with customizations and open source projects. You do need ongoing maintenance and support for changes. It's not like it will work forever with no support. Yeah.
So I've got one more idea on Rick's question, but I think what I'm going to do is when you need to go, I'll play it at the end of this broadcast so I don't waste your time. It's about an 8.5-minute video with another idea just for exporting item images. I thought it was cool because I got to use Power Automate, but I'll save that to the end.
I'm interested though. I'd like to learn more on Power Automate. One of the discussions we've had internally recently is how do we grow and how do we expand this company? And we see a lot of opportunities around the Microsoft Office 365, Power Automate. There's also like other applications in the Office suite that could benefit from Acumatica integrations and extensions. So maybe like Uno, like some sort of Velixo add-on for Power Automate that bridges the gap between Acumatica and the product. So just throwing some ideas. It was mainly brainstorming at this point. The kickoff point was around the Outlook extension. Have you played with the Outlook add-in that's built or offered by Acumatica?
Not that much, a little bit, but I don't like Outlook, so I wasn't to play around with it.
Yeah, we used to work with Gmail internally, but then I figured it would make much more sense to be in Outlook since we are selling a product in the Office 365 stack. I do like it and prefer it now. There are like so many cool things. The way it integrates with Teams, with SharePoint, and also if you use mentions and comments in a spreadsheet, you get that nice template. You can respond directly from Outlook. I mean, there's a bunch of really, really neat things.
Hey, quick, Mike, can you fiddle with your mic just in case that gets rid of the static?
Oh, same thing again? Yeah, I don't know what's wrong today.
I don't know how to make it go away, but it goes
away.
I
cannot hear myself, basically. So
yeah, well, hopefully it'll go away like it did before.
Is it still bad?
Yeah, you can listen to the recording and check.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Well, you know what? I might switch to I have a built-in microphone on my MacBook.
Yeah, so give that a shot.
It will not sound as. What about now?
Yeah, that's better. At least there's no static.
No static? Okay, let's use that for today. I will remove the lavalier, and then after this session, I can figure out what's wrong. We've invested in that new studio, but there are still a few finishing touches needed before things work flawlessly.
Yeah, I also wanted to ask you about an idea, related to Velixo on this whole physical files thing, right? So this isn't actually a file attachments idea, but I don't know if you've seen anything about just pushing generic inquiries out to CSV files using export scenarios. So a client I'm working with has a really large database, and it could take 10 minutes, to push something out over OData. And I'm curious about just looking at, ideally I could just take a generic inquiry. I don't think an export scenario works that way, but if I could just dump it to CSV, the ending files aren't that big, and you can move them across a network share easily and
How big is
load
the
them
file?
into the resulting file is only like less than 20 megs. It's not huge.
Okay, and 10 minutes sounds quite high. Have you checked the request profiler?
Yeah, I need to troubleshoot it more, but
Yeah.
I know that OData is slower, right, than moving a physical file.
Um,
And it's an idea. Have you seen anything with people doing export scenarios on top of a generic inquiry somehow?
I don't think you
Yeah,
can. No.
that would be cool.
Yeah. Well, although if the inquiry is on the sitemap, you might be able. Let's give it a shot. I'm curious. We'll have a definitive answer. Let me pull up my screen here. Try to share just a window. Window. Edge. Oh, okay. So I did use another browser today because I was having camera issues, and it turns out that I'm not allowed to share screen from Firefox today. So the wonders of technology. Yeah.
Do you need to go out and come back in?
Yeah, I do need to go out and
Okay.
come back in. Yes, most likely. So I guess I guess you will have to fill this time until I'm back. I'm not even sure where.
I'll talk a little bit more about this idea and why
Okay.
I'm interested in it.
Okay.
See you in a few seconds.
All good, Tim.
All right. So, yeah, the reason I'm interested in this idea, I actually sent Johnny Girardi an email. We started an email exchange on this. He's got a tool that will take OData and send it into a SQL database. And that's great because it does the differential refresh like Velixo does. It's called Data Self ETL Plus. But for me, I'm more of a duct tape solution kind of person. I don't like to overdo it, and needing to just for storing data. I mean, I don't care about the database. I don't care about having separate users. I don't care about transaction logs. I don't care about all that stuff that databases bring to the table. I just want a file to connect to. And, I recall a conversation that I had with Rob Colley, Power BI person that I know years ago. And, he was doing real sophisticated analysis, and most of his data was coming from CSV files. So OData gives you the nice refreshable mechanism, but CSV files, even though they're really old school, they run a lot faster than OData does. So that's the reason why I'm interested in just pushing data out of Acumatica and dumping it to a CSV. So ideally, hopefully, Johnny, if you're watching this, you can get Data Self ETL Plus to be able to send data to a CSV file, not just a SQL database. Or some way to put an export scenario on top of a generic inquiry, kind of like a expose generic inquiry. Instead of exposing it to OData, expose it to a CSV file. And I think where it gets messy is you need to be able to communicate with a file folder somewhere, right? But it might need to be an FTP site, and then you need something to move it from the FTP site to like a Dropbox share or a OneDrive share or some type of share file that would replicate down to the computers that need it. Although you could also put it on, just a regular company network share drive. A lot of times that's how people access the data, and you could connect Excel/Power BI to the data that way. So that's the reasons for that idea. We're coming up on 12:30 here, so maybe we don't spend any more time on that idea. We had some other things on our list, but we do need Gabrielle for the next one. Maybe I'll just queue it up while we still wait for him to get back on. He's looking at an idea for a Velixo function that would allow you to bring images into Excel. So the theme for today is working with file attachments in Acumatica, but a lot of those file attachments are PDF files if they're copies of documents, but then also a lot of them are images like JPEG or PNG files. And actually my Power Automate idea for extracting images out of Acumatica, I'll play that demo video at the end of the broadcast today. But also related to images is Gabrielle's Velixo function idea to allow you to bring images into Excel. Now, that's all I know about it. We need him to show it. So I guess I'm debating if I should play the Power Automate idea now. I think I'll go ahead and do that. Give Gabrielle some time to get back on. This is a 8.5-minute idea showing how to extract images from an Acumatica environment using Power Automate. My second idea for exporting file attachments out of Acumatica does not require a database backup, but it only works with image files. And specifically, I've only been able to get to work with JPEG and PNG images. But, it is another technique that you can use if you're just looking to extract image files. And I think it's a cool technique because we get to use Power Automate. Now, first thing we do is we need a report that I built with Report Designer. So I'll show you that. It's a real simple report. You can pause the video to look at this in more detail, but I'll just step through. Here's the tables I used. Here's the joins I used. I don't think I did anything on parameters. I did do a filter just to grab a few files. I'm not doing a lot of files here, just for testing and demo purposes. So that's that. And then there's only 2 fields on here. So this one is a text box, and here is the formula. You can see I'm padding 5 Z's in a row until you get to the end. That's what Power Automate is going to use to parse out the data. And then for this one, this is a picture box, which would be up here. And there's the information that you need to pull the images. Once you design that report, you can then run the report, and you wind up with in this case, I'm just doing item images. So this is the item ID with the Z's padded at the end of it. You can see if I get to the last page, I lose the Z's. That's how Power Automate will know to stop. And you have the images here. So then what you do is you export it to PDF, which I've already done here. And here's our PDF file. So this is now our input. This is the way that we extracted the data out of Acumatica, and this is now our input for Power Automate. You can see this will be as many pages as you need with one item ID and image on each page. So if you haven't seen Power Automate, check it out at powerautomate.microsoft.com. There is a paid piece of it you can see on the pricing page if you want your automations to run in the cloud unattended. But what I'm using is just the desktop version, which is free. And you can see if you scroll down here, you can see the different versions. I'm using this desktop version. You can start free and simply download the installer right here. Now, unfortunately, as far as I can tell, I don't know how to export a Power Automate script when you only have the desktop version. So I'm going to do the same thing I did with Report Designer. I'm going to step you through my script. So you would create a new, what's called a flow here. And if I show you how this flow is defined, you can see it looks intimidating at first, but I'll just step you through it. And again, you can pause the video to see the details. Just go one at a time. So we're extracting the text from the PDF file, storing it in a variable. Then we're extracting the images from the PDF file and saving the images to this exported images folder. Looks like there's nothing there. Then we need to trim some of the text with there's white space. There's a lot of little things that you run into in the real world that you have to accommodate. I'm using this as the delimiter, how I split the text into a list. Then I set a counter variable, my counter, to 0. I set this to PNG. Looks like I was only doing PNG files in this case. I get a current date and time, so I'm starting that off. I have to convert it to text. Don't even remember why I had to do that, but I did that. Then I'm setting the my output variable. This is for the log. So I did build a log that you'll see get generated, and I did that because, you know, if you've got 500 files, or in this case images, that you're going through, if it fails, you want to know where it failed. So I'm generating a log. So that's all the setup, and then it's just a loop after that. You can do a for each loop. You can see there's a ton of stuff on the left-hand side that you can do in Power Automate. There's also a lot of information out via a Google search. The old name is Microsoft Flow. So if you don't find it with Googling Power Automate, try Googling it with Flow. That's why you see the Flow name is still lurking around in some parts in here. All right, so we're going to do a loop, and then we got an if statement. If so, we go in here, we rename the files, produce a variable. This, I believe, is for our log output. Setting our output. Then we've got, then we've got an else statement here. Looks like there's nothing to look at there. Then we're doing a rename files, doing more stuff for our log, building our output variable. I don't think there's anything to see here, nothing there. And then I increase my counter by 1, and it runs through the loop again. So get to the end of the loop. I don't think there's anything to see here. Get the current date and time. So we've got the time when it started and when it ended. That way we know how long it took to run. We have to convert that time to text to write it to a file. We add another line to our result variable. And then I think this might be, oh, not quite yet. Let's see, then we assign the result to output. Can't remember why I needed all these steps, but I did, at least the way I did it. And then we're going to write the output to this output text file. That's the variable we've been building throughout the steps. All right, so now it's kind of involved. I'm sure there's a way to export this. You might have to be on a paid plan to do that, or maybe that's a feature that they'll add eventually. But that's my Power Automate, I guess it's called a Power Automate flow. So I'm going to go ahead and flip over to my folder here. So here's the PDF file that it's reading. And exported images is where it's going to dump the information. Now I'm going to just clear that out. I already ran that previously. And maybe let's even put this over here so we can watch it build the folder. All right, so all I need to do is run this flow. It's reading from that PDF file. You can see as it starts to go through, looks like I ran into an error. Okay, I paused the video and fixed the error. The problem was I had gotten fancy and renamed what we were going to call this episode today, or this broadcast. So I just renamed it back to what it was previously. Empty folder. Let's run it again. And you can see it going through the steps, and you can see on the right hand side it's generating the images. So it creates the images and then it renames the files to the item IDs. That's why we needed that item ID data together with the image. So it just pulls the images out, then it renames them. So you wind up with a folder of images, I can open these, that are named according to the item IDs in Acumatica. And then we've got our log right here, so we know how long it took to run. If it failed, we would know what item it failed at, so we could go in and start troubleshooting. So again, though, I've only been able to get it to work with JPEG and PNG images, so this won't work for all file attachments, but at least this is a way to extract image files from an Acumatica environment without needing a database backup. All right, so not sure how useful this one is because it's only images, but I think the cool part is Power Automate. And Gabrielle, you were talking about some ideas for actions in Acumatica. And I recall seeing Ajoy show something. I'll have to go back to my Twitter notes to remember. I don't remember if it was just like a connector or if he also had the idea for like a create sales order action, etc. I
Yeah,
definitely
they were
think that was,
using they were using the Acumatica REST API. I did locate the blog post by an Acumatica Dev MVP that I just put on the screen, but I was curious like how well it works with the REST API today. This has been so long. You are right. Ajoy did present something at some point, but that was years ago.
yeah, it was a while ago. But it's a cool tool. I mean, the trendy word for it is RPA, which stands for robotic process automation. It can actually also work with a web browser, so you can have it like click into a field and automate a web app, that you would normally have to sit down and type into. I just haven't played with it a lot yet, but I think it's a really cool tool.
Okay, so I did manage to get screen sharing to work. And while your video was playing, I verified if there's a way to create an export scenario that would work on an Acumatica generic inquiry. So the bad news, let me start with the bad news first, is that it's not possible to do what you are trying to do with the export scenarios. So I do have a GI that I built before called item pictures, and it's not there anywhere. If you search for GI, either starts with GI in the sitemap, this is not going to show up.
And I know we could do, find the data classes and stuff, but to me that's a non-starter. It had to be a GI to make it usable.
Yes, exactly. And then we're getting into stuff that is way too complex. Excel is all about simplicity. And so far to achieve Rick's requirement, we had to use Power Automate. We had to use
database backups.
Database backups, yeah, correct. So there must be an easier way, right?
So you got an idea on images at least, right? So let's assume we have. Well, yeah, take it away. What's your idea?
Yeah, exactly. I was curious because I remember like getting asked by a client if there would be a way to load pictures in spreadsheets using the Velixo functions. And back then I assumed that this was impossible because in Excel a function can only return text or numbers. It cannot return picture or image. And even if you Google actually Excel formula dynamic picture, you'll find like some articles that explain, but they use it with lookups, and it's a very strange solution. So I couldn't see how you would be able to make that work with Velixo or an Acumatica GI, but that was before I came across a solution used by another product that might be familiar to Velixo users. So here's what I did first to verify if we could make the same thing work with Acumatica. I first built a GI, which is likely similar to the GI that you built in your first example. I started off the inventory item data access class, and I joined with NodeDoc to get a list of files attached to the entity. And then I joined with upload file and upload file revision.
Can you click through the relations tab? Just click through each row so people could go back to it in case they wanted to build this on their own.
Yeah, good idea, Tim. So first of all, inventory item joins with NodeDoc. On the node ID field, NodeDoc will give us the list of all the attachments. Maybe from the schema browser, we can see what's in NodeDoc. Let's click. That's a neat tool, by the way. I discovered very recently that you could click these hyperlinks and it would get you to
it's great. Yeah, it's great to have it in the product.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so you can see basically there's node ID, file ID. So this simply links the record node to all the files that are attached to it. If I do outgoing references, well, you don't see anything, but I do know that this links to the file, the upload file table. So upload file. And then from upload file, I am linking to upload file revision where you did get the binary. So there are two conditions. First one is the file ID, and second one is the last revision ID. That's because Acumatica lets you keep multiple revisions of files that you attach. So by joining the last revision ID with file revision ID, I ensure that I do have the last revision.
I think it's worth noting here with that upload file revision table. You've looked at this before, where I was showing that the column in the database, that data column that stores the binary, that is not available over OData, so you can't push it out, the file data over OData.
Yeah, so you knew already. This is something I discovered this morning. I was hoping that I would be able to get the file binary. So I added blob data. This is the field that contains the binary data to my inquiry. For sure, like, it's not displaying in the GI itself, but I somehow thought that it would work when accessed through OData. So just to prove that it's not working, I will use my OData URL here, and then retrieve item pictures. So
And it makes sense, right? I mean, OData can run pretty slow. That's why the differential smart refresh with Felixo is important. If you were to put entire files over it, it would run incredibly slow. Yeah.
Yeah, probably. But maybe if we filter correctly, it could work. I was hoping that this would work. But what you do get out is still helpful. So we do have the file ID here. So that is a long string of letters and numbers. This is called the GUID. So GUID stands for Globally Unique Identifier, GUID. Type it that here. And this file ID can actually be used to retrieve a file from Acumatica. You do need to be a programmer because this uses the REST API. However, what if we made it easy for you to access that from Excel by simply knowing your Acumatica connection URL and this file ID? This is exactly what I built a few minutes ago, Tim, just to try to have another solution.
I think you said less than 30 minutes, right?
Yeah, I started like at 11:15, something like that. We promised ourselves that we would not be spending too much time in between the sessions. So I did follow on our promise here. So just a few minutes earlier, I started building this. I did do some research before I go. So here's what I came up with. And it's actually interesting because I didn't know Excel could do that. So I built a custom function called getPicture. I will enter my connection name, and then I will paste my GUID.
So this is piggybacking on Felixo. This is just some kind of prototype build that you're using.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, so it's not even in Felixo yet. I just built it in pure VBA just to verify if it's possible. But yeah, you can see that it's loading the picture into my cell. I could have the same picture here, and it would be smaller. So let's copy the formula and paste it here. So
what happens if you resize the cell? Does it change?
Well, see, that's quite interesting. I did copy paste here. So let's try something. Just copy the formula and paste it here. Okay, it's here. If I resize the cell, it will not resize automatically.
Okay.
Now, if I re-invoke the formula, yes, it will.
Interesting.
Okay. And I do have another file ID here that we can test.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So you could have a GI, so that item picture GI here. So you could do GI demo item pictures. Oh, one sec, it's not even there. So you can see that I'm playing some tricks to get this to work, but that's the goal of my prototype.
Yeah, it's all in VBA right now, so it's not talking to the actual Felixo connection yet.
Okay, but provided you have this GI function and you have file ID here, so somebody could just go out and say equal get picture, and then from demo and just get it from this column here, so from E9 to E999, and then it could technically dynamically load the picture from Acumatica and then display it in the spreadsheet. I'm just not sure how useful that would be actually, Tim. So any thoughts? Like, can you see someone like maybe in a quotation solution, it could be helpful to have?
Quote is what I'm thinking of too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, something that is going to end up likely getting saved to a PDF and sent to a customer. right?
Mhm.
Like a quote
Yeah.
where you'd want, I mean, that really enhances things. Actually, I'm working with a client right now on just using a mail merge, basic win mail merge to send out like sales flyers based on products that they've purchased. So we're using Power Pivot to do the intelligence of similar products and things that they purchased, but then we needed Word to be able to do the images. This would get around that because they wanted something that was nice. It's actually going to be a physical mailer, but it could be an email mailer as well. Um, yeah, now you wouldn't have to involve Word. You'd be able to do it right in Excel.
Yeah. So what I did seems to work. It works with any type of picture. Obviously, there is no smart refresh. So if you were to use this in a real life scenario, you would definitely need to take into account performance, because anytime I refresh this, it is reloading the picture from my computer.
And it is counting against your API call limit per month or whatever that limit is.
Oh yeah, you're correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's
But
interesting.
at least we know it is doable. So if somebody ever like asks us to do it, like we could like build a one-off solution for that client.
Sure.
Acumatica gives you the ability to access the files by API. But again, I'm not sold on the real life benefits of loading pictures and spreadsheets from the Acumatica system. I think it's much more likely that people would want to use generic write back to push stuff back to Acumatica, like we're seeing with AP bills and new items that they do create.
Yeah, I feel the same way. That's why exporting it out of Acumatica, a one-time thing or doing that once a month, I think is in the real world needed, right? So actually the Power Automate piece I showed was something I did for the client for that mail merge project, because we just needed to get the images out one time, and then we're just going to read it all from a local file after that.
Okay. And how did you actually send the files with send the email using Power Automate? You just generate.
No, so far it's just a PDF output, so it's going to be a physical mailer.
Okay.
But I am interested as a next step looking at, I think MailChimp and probably a bunch of email providers have Word add-ins.
Mm-hmm.
So you can mail merge instead of to a PDF output, you'd mail merge to a marketing automation program.
Okay. And have you checked what's built into Acumatica, especially the new SendGrid integration with email templates?
Yeah, the problem is you got to write the email template in Acumatica, right? I haven't looked at that.
No, but yeah, I think one of the new features in 2022 R1, or maybe it's an R2, like it's the ability to load the actual SendGrid templates. I saw something on YouTube recently.
Oh, so you could build it outside. You wouldn't have to build it in Acumatica.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
And if it uses SendGrid,
why should you use
it really helps with the deliverability of the email messages. I will post a link to the video I saw.
I'll take a look. That'd be interesting.
Yeah, I do have it here. Just struggling to get copy paste to work. It's not my best day. It's been too long. I'm a bit rusty. We need to do this monthly again. Acumatica.
We're still dusting off our summer dust here.
Yes, it will be fun to see you in Atlanta next month.
Yeah, likewise. Been a while.
Yeah.
In person.
Imports from
why should you use Mirror?
Okay. Here we go. So that's the link. So this does show you how to use the SendGrid templates to send emails from Acumatica.
Thanks. I'll take a look at that.
Yeah. And also that was part of 2022 R1. They added SendGrid integration. It lets you track if the email has been delivered, if it has been opened, if some of the links have been clicked. They likely reused some of the stuff that I had made a while ago, and that's also open source. The same client that was using that box integration is also using SendGrid for emails. They wanted to know when the customer receives the invoice, if they clicked, if whatnot. So now that's built into Acumatica. That's a great thing, and they're really seem to be pushing the integration as well. So that's nice.
Yeah, I didn't know about the templates. To me, the whole back end of the clicks and all that is cool, but if I have to design a template in a clunky program, I'm not interested. But I'll take a look at that.
Yeah. The designer has many limitations. I recall having to go to the database directly to modify some of the templates because it was messing up the HTML output.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
Well, we also had an idea for making AP bill entry easier using Excel, or at least for some use cases, right? And at the end of our broadcast 3 months ago, you showed a little example of writing file attachments into AP bills. It was real simple.
Yes.
But we were looking at an email from one of your customers that wanted to go a little further. Now, their first idea was just dumping images into a folder and then having Excel read from that folder. I do have an idea on how to do that with Power Query.
Okay.
I don't know. We might run out. I think we'll run out of time here, but I think it'd also be cool to extend that example to show how you could tag AP bill lines to PO lines. Maybe we start our next broadcast with that.
Oh,
What do you think?
You're challenging me, Tim.
It's an import scenario challenge, right?
Yeah, we a few weeks ago we had a client ask us if they could link AP bills to PO receipts. They wanted to automate the entire flow, so they receive payments and they want to create the AP bill even though it hasn't been created. So it's a very strange business scenario. They ended up changing how they do it, but I looked into using import scenarios to create the AP bill and link it to a PO receipt. It's not straightforward, but it is definitely doable.
And I'm curious on that. Did you have to have a PO receipt number, or did you match on like the first time the item exists on a PO receipt?
We need a PO receipt number, but the customer did not have that as part of the input. But we used a GI, a Velixo GI. So based on the vendor name and PO number, we're able to retrieve the PO receipt number and then match the amounts. So
that's a better way.
Like preconditions. For example, it would need to be a full receipt and full bill, and the amount would need to match, because as you know, you can have multiple receipts per PO, and then for each receipt you can have multiple invoices. Like there is no way you can manage that properly outside the Acumatica UI.
And then you can also do things like if you had multiple receipts, you would max out the first one until you reach the quantity and then do the second one. Yeah, I like the idea though of introducing that middle step. I hadn't thought about doing it that way. I like that.
But exactly. You could do all of that, but really there are so many complicated scenarios. We said, okay, we can do it, but we will focus on the standard scenario where you have one PO, one receipt, and one invoice, nothing else. If you have anything that deviates from the standard scenario, you will do it from inside Acumatica.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But that's doable. Yeah. As for the other request that I shared with you, which relates to scanning the file system for invoices and then processing that into Excel, my idea was to use VBA, but I think that you came up with something completely different, which pretty much avoids VBA at all. So I would be curious to see this, Tim.
Do you have a folder with file attachments in that we could use?
Yes, I do have one. Were you looking to share your approach, or?
I'd rather you do it because I can walk you through my Power Query part.
Mm-hmm.
The harder part for me is I don't have the GI write back functions in my head yet.
Okay.
Write those.
Should we just focus on that for the next session? This way we have an entire session dedicated around a single topic, because I feel like we're going to cut it short, and next month people will probably be all mixed up. Yeah.
That's a good idea. And we might not be able to do it next month because we'll be live from AUG Summit. It might be an October thing, but yeah, I agree. That would package better with the AP bill to PO line.
Okay. It would be great if we could even have the Acumatica user that's looking to do this. It's a very large company in the US Northeast. They told me they're processing something like 800,000 AP bills per year. Hopefully for us, they're not going to use Excel for all of them, but yeah, they did tell me that they use a combination of EDI, AP automation, and then they have paper invoices that they receive and a few email invoices. And this is what they're trying to use Excel, just to cut down on number of keystrokes and clicks. and the idea that their IT guy had like makes a lot of sense to me. So I can try to see if they're able to join us. Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, and I think another good example would be like credit card statements. You know, you've already got the dump in Excel a lot of times, and you just need to, especially if you're going to do individual AP bills that are tagged to the specific vendors, you just need to add in that vendor information. Um, yeah, I think you even had some ideas on like fuzzy lookups, right? Or maybe that was the idea that your customer needed. They wanted to be able to type in like a partial name or something and have it match. All that stuff would be interesting to cover.
Agree. Yeah.
I want to mention one other idea that didn't really pan out, but you did look into for me because it's a Office Insider build feature that I don't have access to. The idea of using Excel does have some basic image OCR capabilities, but you looked into that and
Yeah, actually,
you decided not to show anything.
let's give it a shot and finish our webinar on that. So I will use Excel on my Mac. In this case, I'm running a VM, so some people might notice and wonder what's going on. I do have a MacBook and I have a VM that's running Windows. So side by side, like you can see, this is Excel for Windows, this is Excel for Mac. I'm just switching back and forth between both depending on what I'm showing. So the OCR, this is a pretty neat thing, like in theory, but in practice, I couldn't get it to do anything helpful. In the insert section, you have data from picture. So you can take any file. So what I did is use this file here. Let me find it. It was from my Velixo 7 launch video. 7, where is that?
And I could see how this might work when you have like a picture with a list of names on it, where the picture is essentially a table or a grid. But an invoice is going to be too messy, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know what's going on. I cannot find the file readily, but it is, Velixo 7 launch right here, demo. So I did have invoices, like FedEx invoices that we used during one of our last webinar. So you can see it's actually scanned. It's not the actual PDF document from FedEx. So that's already not helping, but it's pretty terrible. So let's try it in Excel. So this is data from picture. Now the magic AI is running. Anything that's in red needs to be reviewed. So you can see it's decoding stuff pretty neatly.
And are you able to click on the image to see where the text is, or vice versa? Okay.
Yeah, you can
Can
click.
you move, like expand the box or something to have it pick up more text on the image itself?
No, it's picking up everything, but yeah, I think I can do accept.
So like, let's say invoice number and invoice date should go together. You can't expand the box to pick up all 4 words in one cell instead of 2.
Yeah, it's picking it as part of a separate cell. And you can see it's here, so I can accept. This is probably machine learning, so maybe if you do it a few thousand times, it will get better. Okay. You can do review here, so that is FedEx. Let's try it. Actually, let's try it. I'm really curious to see what will happen next time we do this. Accept.
Yeah, I'm real interesting in this stuff. The gap between the marketing hype and how it actually, the real world on this.
Internet. Oh, see, $12.95 became $1,295.
Is that a dollar sign? I think that's a dollar sign.
Yeah, it did pick up the dollar sign, but it missed.
It missed the number. Yeah.
The dot. Yeah, received. Total this invoice. I have another FedEx invoice, so maybe if we try this one, it will get smarter. But again,
well, it would be interesting to do the same invoice a second time. I mean,
okay.
Right? If it got smarter, it should get smarter on the same invoice.
Okay, let's try it.
Especially with that dollar amount.
Please do not staple or told. Fold. Okay.
I feel like it's a Google CAPTCHA game, but a little more interesting.
Paying software engineers to do complex stuff. This is bad. This is wrong. But it's not really important. Accept.
Yeah, I'm just curious if it gets that dollar amount right on the second pass.
Okay, so now let's do insert data. Insert anyway. Okay, so I mean, we cannot do anything useful with this. Like, let's say you want to write this back to Acumatica. Let's say you
Right.
want to sum up multiple invoices. Like the data is all like garbled. It's not usable for any sort of calculation. So let's do it a second time. Maybe you're right, and it will be smart.
Yeah, and I wonder too, like I'm looking at these systems right now for a client, and I'm wondering if it learns it for the specific vendor, because it should, right? I don't want what it learned to get applied to another vendor,
Mhm.
right? So it's not just about making it smarter; it's about making it smarter and keeping boxes around its learning.
Same thing, Tim. It did ask me to review 49 items again.
Yeah.
And if I don't review, oh, actually, it was not the same invoice. Oh, one sec. This one is 2649.
Did you open all three at first?
85992. Okay, let's do it again. Data from picture. And 85992. This one here.
You didn't open multiple files the first time, did you? You have to open one
one.
picture at a time.
Yeah, just one at a time.
Okay.
Yeah, but see, I mean, like this is the same one we used last time. And it's
Where's that
asking me to
dollar
review
amount?
everything all over again.
Huh.
And yeah, it's still picking this up as $12.95, $1,295. So this
Yeah.
is not good.
Yeah, it's a good theory, but yeah, how
A big thumbs down from me.
and then it's sort of like science, right?
Mhm.
If you throw enough millions of years at something, you could explain anything. But
Did you put millions of years or millions?
like in science class, right? I mean, you're like, oh, I'm not sure how you get from here to here, but if it's enough million years, that would happen. It's sort of the same idea here. If I do it 1,000 times, it'll learn it. Well, I want to see it learn it. I want to see it actually happen.
Yeah. And just in case people are wondering, I did try it as well with a real PDF invoice, something that was generated by a computer and not something that was scanned, and it's not any better.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Huh.
about pretty much the same result. It does, pick up the numbers correctly, but it will give me a spreadsheet that is in no way usable for any sort of calculation or automation.
Well, and actually, I kind of like that, because then it is treating all images equally. It's not trying to parse out metadata if it can find it. It's really looking at it as an image. That makes sense to me.
Did you try the built-in AP automation in Acumatica? I've seen the demos, but like I'd be curious to hear from an actual user.
I've tried it a little bit. My main gripe with it so far is, and that's why I was asking if you could expand that to cover invoice date and invoice number, because if it doesn't see things as being grouped together, I can't find an easy way. Like sometimes holding down control works and sometimes it doesn't, but I want to regroup it, like draw the box around it.
Mhm.
The user interface is not great. Yeah. From my experience, I haven't used it a ton, but I'm in the process of evaluating solutions on that. To me, a lot of it comes down to the user interface. I need to be able to teach it. It needs to feel good, right? It's not just that it's smart on the back end.
Yeah. So maybe eventually these technologies will work and do something useful, but at this point, like I think if you have to process a large number of AP documents, you should be using EDI.
Yeah.
In the European Union, in the EU, right now they're working on a big reform that will introduce e-invoicing across countries. So they are standardizing things. I think part of it is to control tax fraud, but it will also enable automated invoicing between ERP solutions. So that is triggering a huge wave of ERP migrations. But I think in the end, there will be benefits for businesses too. This is something that we really need. Like EDI is complex, so you generally do not implement EDI unless you're forced to, or unless you have like millions, if not billions, of dollars in volume.
I'm glad you brought up, because I was going to mention that too. Like South America, many South American countries, they look at at this and wonder what the need is, because they have to submit it all through the central agency to do any kind of invoicing. So the whole image reconciliation or recognition is completely useless. And I think the EU's getting there. I think America will be very far behind because we don't trust the government enough in general to, you know, centralize all of that, right? We're, the more socialist you are, the more likely you are to embrace EDI. I think that image recognition need will be around in the US for a while.
Yeah, but on the other end, like, because of the fact that like the US does not like to have like centralized authorities that control like stuff like that, you do end up with complexities around, let's say, sales taxes. And I was amazed, like as a Canadian, I was amazed the first time I saw the complexity of sales taxes, and you know, the fact that companies like, well, can we name them? Can we name other vendors on this show, Tim?
I don't see why not.
Oh, okay, yeah. So I mean, I'm talking about companies like TaxJar, Avalara. Like the fact that you can have a business around this, like to me, is like a strange thing. It shows that it's so complex that companies want to outsource it and pay like a pretty significant amount of money to a third party to just manage calculation and remittance of taxes. Yeah,
I'm not arguing one way or the other. I'm just saying I think it'll take a while in the U.S. for that to actually happen.
I don't see that happening ever. Yeah. Anyway, this creates work for us, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's why we're talking about this.
Yeah, I just retrieved the link to the e-invoicing EU standard. So yeah, they do say that it will reduce costs and make faster payments, but I think that they are like really trying to control tax fraud and make sure that everybody pays their fair share of taxes.
Sure.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
Okay.
Well, cool. I think it's a cool idea. We'll have to keep an eye on that. You know, to be fair, it's in the insider build only, right? It's not in regular Excel. So we'll see what happens if it ever makes its way.
And just like all technical demos, they usually work well when you watch their videos. I did see something where they were using a smartphone to just take a picture of a table and creating a neat table in Excel.
That would make sense because it's already structured as a table. Yeah.
Yeah. A good test actually could be to print something and just scan it afterwards. Hey, let's do this, okay? Before we jump off, Tim, let me take any spreadsheet that I have here. I will print it and we will try to scan it again, okay? Want to try that?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Okay, so I will bring up my Rapid by Sample. I do have it here.
Just pick one of the tables, so it's all one table.
This one. So I'll print this to my LaserJet. Print. Okay, and I'll stay with you because I know that it could take a few seconds to warm up. And then once it's done, I will run to the printer and be back. So waiting for job to complete. Oh, and okay, it's printed. I'll be back.
Okay.
I'm back. So we should have started some background music while I was away. I think this is somewhere in.
I'm jotting down my 2 notes for next time so I don't forget them.
Okay, so will it work? I will use my smartphone just to make things more interesting. We do have Excel on the smartphone, so can I turn on mirroring? Gabriel MacBook Pro.
Yeah, like a trade show, you know, where you captured people's contact info in a table format. Of course, that'd be handwritten to be a little harder.
Okay, so let's open Office. So let's create.
And this one, actually, I think this is the regular Excel app you're using, right? It's not the
Yes. It's been on mobile for a while.
Yeah,
I do have it here. Can I make this full screen just to remove any distraction? Display full screen. Can you still see it, Tim? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So scan table. So now it is open. Oh, so you can see some of my personal pictures
Ooh, nice
here.
camera.
Said what?
Nice camera.
Okay. I think this will be a disaster.
It doesn't look vivid on your screen. It looks pretty blurry
No,
here.
it looks bad on
Okay.
my phone.
Maybe we can do a take two with a smaller subset. Zoom in on one of those
Uh-huh.
tables.
So now it's extracting the data. Okay. Well.
Oh, that's not terrible. Are you able to save it and open it on your
Yes,
computer?
exactly. So I will do open. Oh, it did 38 items, need your review. And then let's save Excel Talk. Okay, and now let's switch back to Excel on my Mac. We're also showing the power of the cloud at the same time, right?
Right.
Excel Talk, it's right here. Well, it's pretty good. I'm actually impressed.
Even got the Acumatica part, or did it put two C's in there?
Oops.
Can't tell. Grab the Acumatica logo.
Okay, something really interesting happened. I think we found a bug in Excel. So now I have a file called Excel Talk that contains the entire workbook. So maybe it got too smart and said like, hey, like it looks like you're trying to scan a file you already have.
Oh, that's creepy. That would be really creepy.
Yeah. Let's create a copy. I think something went wrong, so I will just create another copy of this file. And I'll close everything. I said no. It's asking me to save. Okay, so something is really screwed up here, so I will just force code. I'm running a beta version of Excel, so that could explain some of the issues. Excel copy. Okay, so now the file is back. And just for fun, let's try to sum up the expenses. Yeah, the numbers look good, Tim.
Interesting.
Yeah, just summed up the revenue, and yeah, pretty neat.
But yeah, and I guess, when you think about invoices, your invoices were pretty blurry. At least they look like it on my screen.
Yeah, exactly. So it looked blurry as well on my side, and even on the paper, like it's zoomed out. I'm not filling the sheet entirely, so it's actually impressive that it managed to do such a good job with the amount.
I mean, your FedEx invoices look kind of blurry. I wonder if you had a cleaner scan of that.
Yeah,
that might turn out better for the OCR.
Mhm.
Okay.
And maybe this is also tuned towards spreadsheet type documents. If it's an invoice that came out of a Word document or something like the Acumatica Report Designer, maybe it will not work as nice.
That's what it seems like, yeah. And the AI part, it seems to be more of an OCR tool, not an AI tool.
Mm-hmm.
The teaching it might remember that specific text, but it might not remember this is where the invoice number is. That's where you need a real, I think, AP type of AI solution.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, cool. Thanks
Cool.
for satisfying my curiosity on that. Oh, we've also got a plug from Joel about the AP. There, we got a whole class on the AP document recognition in Acumatica next month at AUG Summit in Atlanta. Nice plug, Joel.
Okay.
I like that.
Yeah, I think I will try to attend if if there's some room. I'm interested to see how well it works and whether it properly recognizes blurry invoices like the FedEx one we had.
Same here.
Yeah.
Well, welcome
you.
back after the summer, and we'll pick it up again next month in Atlanta.
Yes. See you in a few weeks, Tim.
All right. See ya.
Cheers. Have a great day.